Hulk. Hero or monster? The big brute who gets more dangerous the angrier he becomes. As a kid, I loved Ang Lee's Hulk movie. Did I understand it? No, but that movie always captured my attention. Ever since he was introduced in the MCU, his fans have been kind of disappointed in him. Personally, I was always content with him even after Infinity War. Could he have more? Of course, but I never viewed him as someone who could carry the main show. So I was genuinely surprised to discover through social media that Hulk was once regarded as being on par with Spider-Man in terms of greatness within the Marvel Universe. After hearing this, my curiosity went through the roof. Is he really as good as people say, or are my outside impressions of him correct? Hello, this is Sunman, and today I'll give you my opinion on Hulk. I did this previously with Batman, and by the way, to everyone who recommended the story, I appreciate it and tried to get my hands on them. Most of them I managed to find. Same with Batman, you guys could recommend me some Hulk story. This time I want to focus less on reviewing the stories themselves and more giving an overall view of Hulk. The basis of my review will be Marvel Origins The Incredible Hulk, Hulk Smastronaut by Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley, Planet Hulk and World War Hulk by Greg Pak, Carlo Pagulayan, Aaron Lopresti and John Romita Jr., Hulk Dystopia by Peter David, George Perez and Dale Keown, The Immortal Hulk Run by Al Ewing, a Hulk integral book from 1996 to 1997, and there are still some I'm reading, for example Incredible Hulk Run from 2023 and some other book that has random Hulk stories. While I didn't expect it to be generic, I was still shocked by how narratively rich and diverse these stories are. I'd always thought it was just about Bruce Banner being cursed with the Hulk while the world hunted him down. That's not exactly wrong, but it's a serious oversimplification. An important part of understanding the Hulk is knowing his childhood. Yes, I said I didn't want to retell the stories, but it's hard to give my opinion without first explaining what the Hulk actually is. Brian Banner, Bruce's father, was a nuclear physicist whose jealousy began the moment his wife became pregnant. He couldn't stand that Bruce had become the center of her attention, and over time that resentment curdled into hatred. He grew abusive, regularly beating both his wife and his son, and came to view Bruce as a mutant, something inhuman, something monstrous, rather than his own child. The abuse escalated for years until Brian murdered his wife as she tried to flee with Bruce in tow. He was imprisoned for the killing and released 15 years later. Bruce, despite everything, tried to accept his father back into his life, but Brian relapsed, or more likely simply stopped masking since his therapy had probably never changed him at all. The confrontation came to a head at the cemetery where Bruce's mother was buried, and in self-defense, Bruce accidentally killed him. As a child, Bruce had already created alternate personalities as a coping mechanism for the abuse. Years later, during a nuclear experiment, he threw himself in the path of a gamma bomb to save Rick Jones, a cocky teenager who'd wandered onto the test site. Instead of dying, Bruce transformed into the Hulk. Ever since, those buried personalities have grown more unstable and more vocal. Just having that as a backstory makes it a tough read, at least for me. With Spider-Man or Batman, the loss of their loved ones is life-defining, sure, but they outgrow that trauma, or at least manage to live with it. With Hulk, even if he manages to find peace, he has to live with the fact that he has dissociative identity disorder because of his childhood. He can't simply outgrow that. If you ask me, I'd say that backstory is more impactful than Batman's or Spider-Man's, as crazy as that sounds. I mean, Brian, his father, is a reoccurring villain, at least mentally. I don't see Joe Chill or Uncle Ben's killer being recurring in the same way. What is also fascinating to see is that there's no good or evil personality, just different ones. Bruce is the base one, and yeah, he usually isn't the cause of massive destruction, but he also isn't just a good guy. He's someone who can be cruel toward everyone, especially toward his other personalities. Now sure, you can say he's acting out of fear of them, but using that as an excuse all the time isn't acceptable, and that behavior also extends to other people. He's been cruel to Harpy, Betty Rose's Hulk personality. While not as extreme, the behavior parallels his father's. Now he isn't just a monster either, he's still someone who, while he can be cowardly, can push himself to be a hero. He was the one who saved a teen, even though he knew the chances were slim. The Savage Hulk, the Hulk you see in the movies, is someone with the intellect of a child, with simple speech, quick to anger, deeply lonely, and mostly wanting to be left alone. Someone who wants to fight back since he's the repressed rage and helplessness from Bruce. Another personality is Joe Fixit. He's a gangster. I know, kind of funny, a gangster Hulk. He doesn't cause much destruction, but being a gangster isn't really typical superhero activity. Now there are more, for example my personal favorite, Green Skull, Devil Hulk, Professor Hulk, Maestro, etc. The point is all these personalities aren't inherently evil or good, they all exist as a result of trauma and self-defense. Even Maestro, who acted as a dictator, didn't just want to be evil, he exists because he now lives in a post-apocalyptic world that pushed him to strip his restraint away. He's still a bad guy, I don't want to lessen it, but not for no reason. Reading those stories, if I hadn't seen his movies, I would not know he's a superhero. None of them play out like your typical superhero story. Hulk as a character is a heartfelt one. Honestly, he seems more interesting than other major superheroes I've read. What about the stories? Like I hinted to earlier, there are no strict genres. What's funny about the stories is that prior to reading them, you have no idea what the scale will be. In some, he's facing the military, in others he's up against grand characters like Greek gods or other heroes, and in some, he's facing entities that casually transcend realities and should, by all logic, make him look like nothing. The best part is that it doesn't feel out of place because the driving force of these stories is Hulk's state, which is also the source of what makes him strong. If he's extremely sad or if he's in a weaker personality, like say Professor Hulk, he's going to lose, but if that man is in an angered state with a dangerous personality, there's no stopping him. Because he's such a multifaceted character, you can put Hulk in any type of story. You can make a tragedy, a romance, or even a comedy. It all depends on how you write the Hulk, and it simply works. What makes Hulk great is also the characters around him. The bonds Hulk has are all profound, but the greatest ones for me are Betty Ross and Rick Jones. These two are the most significant. At first you think Betty is just his wife, but through her we actually see the perspective of someone neglected by everyone. She might not have gone through a singular painful event like Batman or Spider-Man, but she's someone who gets abandoned by everyone and has to handle toxic people, Bruce and her father. She understands why the most important people in her life are so toxic. She doesn't know how to deal with it, and she's always stuck in a complicated situation. Rick Jones, on the other hand, represents the good side of Hulk. No matter what insanity the Hulk causes, Rick will always represent the kid he saved. The hope that he isn't just a monster but a creature capable of doing good. Rick himself is someone who understands his role in all of this. He started off as a bratty, arrogant teenager, but thanks to Bruce he was saved, and he knows the person in front of him isn't a cold-hearted monster. He might be insane and mentally ill, but not cold-hearted. Rick knows the big guy is caring, and he'll always try to bring that out of him. There are other great characters too, like She-Hulk and Amadeus Cho, but these two are the most important. One aspect I think could be better are his villains. The most personal villain he has, besides his father, is the leader. To be fair, he's great, but looking at him, he isn't really a character that serves as a great foil to Hulk. On that front, I think there could have been more. With all of this, I think it's clear that Hulk with even that much success is an underrated masterpiece. Such a character has so much emotional depth and is so multifaceted. But do I think the MCU butchered him? Not necessarily. As much as I think there's a night and day difference between his comics and movies, the most important aspect of him is the trauma he underwent under his father. Trying to adapt that while keeping the superhero tone is just impossible. That's only possible as an alternative movie or as an animated project. In the MCU, we do see him trying to handle his other persona. We do see him having mental issues. We see Bruce being flawed or not just the good guy. We see him struggling to form bonds. We see his personality disorder. The problem is just a quantity issue. He needs more material for us to see his complexity. His personality disorder was very briefly shown in Endgame where he manages to merge body and personality, and in She-Hulk we get confirmation that only Bruce has to wrestle with another guy and not Jen, which again confirms that only he has the issue and points in that direction.
Why are you talking to me like I'm a stray horse?
Jen?
Yeah?
This is incredible. You don't have an alter ego. You're the only one in there?
As far as I can tell.
You don't have another guy to wrestle with for 10 years.
But that isn't enough. Honestly speaking, as much as She-Hulk gets hate, that show did the most with Hulk. Not even his solo movie explored him that much. So would you say he was butchered? I'm ready to give them the benefit of doubt and say I don't think so. Some storylines of his were, Planet Hulk for example, but Hulk as a character? I'd say no. He's just heavily underutilized. What's weird is that 2 of his villains appeared in Captain America Brave New World. This isn't a diss towards it, but how can it be that Hulk has faced his villains less than Cap has? Overall, his comics are fantastic and leagues better than his movies. But his MCU version isn't a failure. He just doesn't fully show what makes his comics great.